I'm Madeline Ling, and I worked with Marilyn for 30 or more years at Houghton Mifflin, a great honor and a privilege. And I'm very pleased today to read you a message from Laura Owens, who's been vacationing in Australia and couldn't make it back in time for this. But everybody should just know that for Laura, this very moment is in her heart. Thanks so much. I wish that I could be there with you all today as you celebrate Marilyn's life. I had the privilege and pleasure of knowing Marilyn for over 25 years, first in the context of work and more importantly in later years as a friend. When I first met Marilyn, I had just joined the reading department and was given the job of organizing the Core Agenda files. In the early days, I would approach Marilyn's office with some trepidation, for her reputation was formidable, and her demeanor was always serious as she reviewed my requests. I was very aware of Marilyn's accomplishments and what she represented to me as a member of the next generation of women at Houghton Mifflin, the first female vice president in the division, a lawyer, and a mother to 2 young daughters. About 10 years ago, I went to work directly for Marilyn. We were immediately plunged into a very complicated math project, and through countless hours of meetings, I had the chance to more closely observe Marilyn's unflagging focus in seeming total serenity in the face of impossible deadlines and endless budget problems. Over time, I realized that there was one key to Marilyn's stress level. If a meeting involved food, the number of pieces Marilyn split her cookie into was directly proportioned to her feelings about the topic being discussed. And there were a lot of crumbs on the table for this particular person. At every stressful juncture, after I ranted or threw up my hands, she would always say, well, we've just got to figure out a way to get through this. And I'd take a deep breath, try to absorb some of her calmness, and we begin to figure it out. As much as I value Marilyn's mentoring at Houghton Mifflin, it's our post-Houghton Mifflin relationship that I treasure the most. It became apparent to me just how much our relationship had changed one day last summer as I watched my daughter squirted her in the face with a fish filled with water. And she, Marilyn, laughed. Marilyn's accomplishments to admire multiplied in the last few years, learning to speak Spanish, becoming certified and teaching ESL, and finally her work with Habitat for Humanity in Mexico. Her great love for the people she met there and her appreciation for their art and culture were so genuine and clearly reciprocated. I rejoiced in her quote-unquote second act and the courage she showed in stretching far beyond her comfort zone. She would call on that courage again and again last winter as she bravely faced a daunting schedule of chemo and radiation. I'm glad to have shared that time with her, along with the more recent lunches and phone calls, and will miss her in more ways than I can say. On my own part, what I'd like to share with you is that many years ago at 1 Beacon Street, there was a renovation, and all the artwork was down on the floor. And mind you, I know there are a lot of people here that I worked with and reported to during that period, so this stays within the 4 walls, as is common speak in our business meetings, was common speak. So Marilyn and I would share stories about our cats. And on the floor was an original pen and ink of a certain cat in a tuxedo from one of our long ago language arts programs. Marilyn said to me, because I was moving to a new office, would you like this for your office? And I said, oh, but of course, I'd coveted it for a long time. And this is what stays within those 4 walls. I shall remember Marilyn every time I look at that picture, which is now in my home. I also retired from Houghton Mifflin last year, and it is one of the nicest pieces of memorabilia that I shall ever have of Houghton Mifflin Company, and particularly of